Hi everyone, Paul here. Good morning. My thoughts for the morning on November 23rd, 2020. And I'm entitling this talk, Hey Christians, think about what you're thinking about. As I try to point out where I see the fallacy of this right-wing evangelicalism, what I hear from people a lot is, why don't you read the Bible? You're taking things out of context, as I described a Jesus that's different than what they've always known. And as I watch the president do what I believe is immoral and incredibly dangerous in trying to subvert an American election, I guess maybe I was naive in my thinking that Christians would never go along with something like that. And certainly we would never believe sort of blatant lies around it. And as I've watched that happen, I've been stunned and trying to think of what could be going on here. And honestly, I've never felt a need to try to tell people, hey, this is why I'm right and others are wrong. But I get asked the question so often of like, Paul, how can you believe this when this leader believes this or this prophet believes this? And since I'm asked that question so often and it's such a confusing thing, let me address kind of how I see it just a little bit. And none of this is to say I'm right and everybody else is wrong. But again, this is just to address a question that I keep getting asked a lot. And what I think we see happening is what is called groupthink. I use the term mindset a lot. I think the Bible uses the term principality. It's just a thought process that a whole group of people come under together. And in fact, this is the psychology definition. The psychologist community in America says that groupthink is the practice of thinking or making decisions as a group in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility. We're all under the influence of our tribe, of our group. And now we're seeing in this season, a lot of people are breaking this down saying, if you're in that groupthink, you will defend it to really extreme measures, because to come out of that groupthink in some ways means you have to come out of that group. And so you're making a choice. Do I believe something that is a little bit dissonant, or do I lose my community? And those are very difficult decisions to make. But when we have leaders who are saying things that I believe are very wrong, we need to think about what we're thinking about. Thus the title of this talk, Christians, let's think about what we're thinking about. And let me show you where this is in the Bible. If we go to Acts chapter 22, there was this guy named Saul of Tarsus, and he had this big conversion. But as Saul of Tarsus, he was a really terrible guy. But here's the thing that we don't understand about Saul of Tarsus. He was a man with a passion for God like very few others. And this is how he described himself in Acts chapter 22, verse 3. He says, I am a Jew, born in Tarsus in Cilicia, and brought up in this city, he's talking about Jerusalem, educated at the feet of Gamaliel, according to the strict manner of the law of our fathers, being zealous for God. He had a passion for God, as all of you are this day. I persecuted Christianity to the death, binding and delivering to prison both men and women. And we also know children as well. As the high priest and the whole council of elders can bear me witness, from them I received letters to the brothers, and I journeyed to Damascus to take also who were there and bring them in bonds to Jerusalem to be punished. So this is being written by a man who's now named Paul, has had a conversion from his old way of thinking into a new way of thinking, and he's explaining how all this happened. But what's interesting is he's saying, hey, I lived in the center of scriptural studies in Jerusalem. I studied at the very best school, the school of Gamaliel, and I knew it better than anyone. He was passionate for God. And as passionate for God, as learned in the scriptures, he came out of that study with this idea: my job that God wants me to do is to drag men, women, and children out of homes where they claim to be Christian and have them brought to Jerusalem to be executed. His passion, his sincerity for following God told him, my job is to cleanse the religion, and I need to get rid of anybody that dissents with our groupthink. Paul was sincerely pursuing God, sincerely studying the scriptures, And his conclusion of all of that was sincerely wrong. If we don't have the Spirit of God enlivening what we're studying, our sincere heart for God can come out with some sincerely wrong conclusions. It's possible. Just because this is what we've always heard in our churches and this is what we're hearing from our leaders doesn't mean they're right. And not only was Paul under the influence of this system and making these choices, his leaders gave him documents that said, yes, we are for you going to these towns and having these Christians executed. The system called for anybody who disagreed with it to be killed. And why? Well, Paul was a Pharisee, and the Pharisees believed that if we cleanse the religion and everybody acts correctly and appropriately under our religious belief, our country will be blessed. They believed if they could get rid of all Christians who were ruining their religious system, God would make Israel great again. Sound like anything else we know that's going on? Now we believe if we could get a law passed to ban abortion and stop abortion from happening in America and get taxes lower and get the embassy in the right place in Israel and blah, da, 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 God will make America great again. And I believe in that sincere, passionate pursuit of God belief. We've become sincerely wrong. It's why I always use the hashtag, the religious right is religiously wrong. Religious right is religiously wrong. I'm sorry, I'm messing up my hashtag there. Religious right, religiously wrong. I believe my brothers and sisters are very sincere, but their groupthink has caused them to miss some things. Where else did this happen in the Bible? Am I just making this up out of this place? Well, no. 1 Kings 22, we have Ahab calling in prophets, and they're giving him prophecies that we learn are coming straight from heaven, and they're incorrect prophecies. God was giving false prophecies for his own purpose. In Jeremiah chapter 5, we see Jeremiah say, hey, the prophets are prophesying falsely, and my people like it that way when their leaders lead out of these false prophecies. And then in Jonah chapter 4, let me read to you from Jonah chapter 4. It's one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, and I think every Christian should have to read Jonah chapter 3 and 4 at least once a year to see what God says when we start to believe he should start destroying people around us. So in Jonah chapter 4, what we see happening is God has relented and not destroyed Nineveh, a city that Jonah desperately wanted to be destroyed because they were evil, horrible people according to his heart. And this is what his conversation with himself and with God happens in Jonah chapter 4. So it says, but it displeased Jonah exceedingly. He was very unhappy that God hadn't destroyed the city. And he was angry. And he prayed to the Lord and said, "O Lord, is this not what I said when I was yet in my country?" Remember, God called Jonah to go preach to these people. And Jonah said, you know what? Thank you, God, for that request. I'm going to go in the opposite direction. God provided transportation for him back in the form of a big fish that brought him back, is how the story goes. And Jonah's like, now this is why I was telling you I didn't want to come, God. So, O Lord, is not this what I said when I was yet in my country? That is why I made haste to flee to Tarshish in the opposite direction, for I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and relenting from disaster. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. And the Lord said, do you do well to be angry? Isn't this a fascinating conversation? Jonah so wanted God to destroy Nineveh that when God said, I want you to go to Nineveh and talk to the people, Jonah's like, no, I won't go. And you know why? Because I know you're good, God. I know you love people. I know you're slow to anger, and I don't want that for those people out there. Is there any chance that's us, evangelicals? No, God, I want gays to be wrong and going to hell. I want abortionists to be horrible people. I want passing a law to ban abortion to be the solution because I can control that and it's in my power. I can vote for that and I feel like I'm doing my Christian duty. And God says, do you do well to be angry? And we say, God, I would rather be dead than live in a country that's led by a Democrat. And God says, do you do well to live in this groupthink? Now, some of you may have just turned off this video, but let me ask you, Christians, are we thinking about what we're thinking about? Or have we just been under the same groupthink mindset for so long? We want it to be so. Even if the prophets are prophesying falsely, we like it that way. We want them to tell us what we want to hear. And we like Donald Trump telling us what we want to hear, even if it's a complete fabrication and farcical lie. As long as we can watch OAN and Newsmax and read QAnon things, and it tells us what we want to know, we're in. And we don't want to live in a world where it's otherwise. Here's the amazing thing about the Jonah story, though, is if we come out of that mindset, the mindset of the city of Nineveh was flipped in a moment by a group of people saying, hey, the man of God is here. Something good is happening. Let's jump towards it. And out of doing that, the authority of their city was influenced to change, and their city was changed. And that made Jonah so angry because he wanted the solution to be his solution. But when the solution was God's solution, it made him really angry. And I think, Christians, what we're passionately wanting to see, the goodness of the life modeled by Jesus in our cities, in our state, and yes, in our country to be made great. If we went after God's heart for that, we could see something amazing happen, but it wouldn't be what we wanted to see. And maybe this generation is really angry to think that that's what the solution would be. And we'd rather be dead than live in that change. Don't believe me? It's in the Bible, happening over and over and over again. Let's think about what we're thinking about. And maybe we can actually see real lives changed, like pregnant mothers who don't think they can have their baby, their mind will be changed because the kindness of the culture comes around them and says, we will help you. And you don't have to be afraid. Instead of us saying, we'll pass a law to make you a criminal, we say we really care about you as a human being as well as what's conceived inside of you. Wouldn't that be an amazing mindset to live under instead of this one that says, I hate Democrats, I hate Joe Biden, I hate any Christian that disagrees with my mindset? Let's think about what we're thinking about, Christians. And maybe we can actually be a part of transforming ourselves so that culture can be transformed, as Romans 12:2 tells us it can. Do you do well, Christians, to think this way? That's my thought for a Monday. Bless you guys. Go to my website, npepodcast.com, for all kinds of great resources. I'm asking some who can to join our Patreon page. There's a little subscription service there. I'm trying to raise some money to hire some more resources to help me do what I do a little bit better. So if you can join our Patreon page, it starts at a little as $5.99 a month. If you go to the $12.99 a month level, I'll give you an autographed copy of my novel. You have my audiobook series on there, some other cool stuff, and you get to be a part of our private Facebook group. Anyway, love you guys. Just let's be partners in walking this out and have some fun together, seeing the world transformed by God's plan, even if it's not our plan. Think about it. Have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving.